how to make a podcast in 2025. I'm telling you right now, it's not too late to start. There are podcasts that will be founded in the next 6 months that will be incredibly successful, monumental podcasts 5 years from now. Yours could be one of them. So, what is a podcast? Well, a podcast is an episodic based show that's either audio only or audio and visual that is usually centered around a particular theme, topic, or host and is distributed online via YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Now, where does the term podcast come from? Well, interestingly enough, it is actually the combination of the word iPod and broadcast. Essentially, an iPod broadcast. It was coined in the early 2000s and it represented something incredibly new. Now, podcasts started as shows that were very similar to radio, but designed for the internet, and have since evolved into these massive multimedia productions that we see today. So when starting a podcast in 2025, the number one thing to consider and remember is the importance of your audio. No matter what year it is, if this is a podcast, audio is king. This format started as an audio only format and later video was added to it. But at the end of the day, because it's such a talk heavy format, you want to make sure that people can spend hours and hours and hours listening to your content regardless of whether or not there's anything on the screen. Therefore, I highly recommend that you invest the money into high quality microphones, okay? Whether it's an XLR microphone, a USB microphone, there are plenty of options to choose from plenty of providers that can give you some really high quality sound. A second thing to consider in your audio world is if you have the ability to, have the option or the budget, invest in an audio interface or a field recorder and record your audio through one of those two devices. It'll give you optimal sound quality and it'll give you optimal flexibility. I recommend starting out with something like a Focusrite interface or a Tascam field recorder, or if you can afford it, a Zoom F6 that'll take your audio recording to the next level. The last thing to consider for your audio when starting a podcast and producing your own podcast is to record in as close as you can to a treated environment, right? I'm not going to necessarily say record in a treated environment because you won't always be in a treated environment. Even if your podcast is, 200 episodes in and you're highly successful, you still might have to occasionally go on the road and record from a hotel or record from a residence or an Airbnb. And these are not going to be necessarily treated environments, but what are we looking for in an environment for optimal recording? We want something that doesn't have a lot of reverb. So something that's not an echoey, spacious, empty room where things are going to sound far, far away. That's the last thing we want. We want something to sound dry. We want it to sound flat because in post-production, it's very easy to boost that signal and get a nice, warm, rich, and loud tone without having all of this extra background noise and hiss that really lowers the quality of your audio and lowers your audience ability to pay attention for a long period of time. Now, it's 2025. If you're starting a podcast this year or any year from this year, visual is a must. I repeat, video is required. Platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, they all prefer visual content. And if you're starting a podcast, one of the most important things that you're going to have to do is market your podcast. And the easiest way to market your podcast is if you have some kind of visual content to attach to it. Now, there are some solutions for people who really don't want their face on camera. You can use AI-generated avatars, for example. You can use cartoon avatars. Why do podcasts need to be filmed? Because discoverability is almost impossible without visual content. You need to be able to market your podcast and get it out to as many people as possible. So at this point, I would say that it is an absolute necessity, an absolute must that you have visuals as a part of your podcast. It doesn't have to be this elaborate multi-camera $50,000 setup. It can just be an iPhone with a ring light to start with, but something so that you can share all of that hard work that you put into making this great and amazing content. Now, the next element that is incredibly important when producing a podcast is lighting. Lighting is perhaps the most important element of the visual side of production. You have audio on one side, you have visual on the other. And the quality of your visuals will oftentimes depend on the quality of your lighting. Even cheaper cameras and less advanced cameras can still look sharp with enough lighting. It's important to understand your camera sensor, and go on resources like ChatGPT and figure out what are the optimal lighting settings that will maximize this particular camera that I have so that I don't have grainy footage, I don't have footage that's too dark, I don't have footage that's overblown and hard to see, right? It's very important that you have plenty of light and you film in bright spaces to give your camera a fighting chance, no matter what budget level you're at as far as cameras go. And it also just makes a really quality professional looking product. Now, if all you have is a ring light, that's okay. It's better than nothing. I'd rather you start with that than nothing at all. Using natural light can also be great, but remember, the light needs to be on your face and not behind you. So if you are going to use just a window or a set of windows, make sure that you're facing the window and that the camera is facing you. That way you don't have harsh lighting behind you that's causing your face to appear dark on camera. Now, if you have the budget or you have the options, use a 3-point lighting set. A key light, a fill light, and a light that you can splash on the background so that everything pops and everything looks sharp and clean and great. But if you don't have an elaborate setup, or maybe you just don't have the space, one light is the perfect place to start. Overall, lighting contributes significantly to audience retention and visual credibility. Well-lit podcasts that look sharp, that look great, those are the ones that people want to watch. Those are the ones that people will stick around for. And if it's bad lighting, you might have a great concept, but you'll be relying a lot more on the other elements of your podcast, whether it's the funniness of your host or the interestingness of your content, in order to keep people's attention because they are a little bit distracted by the poor quality of the lighting in the room. Now, once you've got your lighting set up, it's important to consider your camera setup. When producing a podcast, obviously you want the highest quality visual you can possibly get. But that doesn't necessarily mean buying the next most expensive camera that comes out every year. You can get amazing quality footage with a camera that can shoot in 4K and appropriate lighting. As long as your camera shoots in 4K and you've optimized your camera sensor by using great lighting, you can get amazingly sharp images. Now, if it's in your budget, the more cameras, the merrier. The more angles, the more cuts you can do, the more interest you can create in the visual product and keep people entertained throughout. So even if it's a slow portion of the conversation, you can still keep people's attention just by switching angles or maybe a little camera movement here and there. But that's not necessary to produce great content. It's just an added bonus. So start with the basics. Even if it's just an iPhone, start with the basics and maximize what you have. And as you grow, build out your kit. Now for podcasts, you're gonna wanna use cameras that can shoot in 4K or relatively new iPhones. And you're gonna wanna make sure that they're on tripods. A still image is the best image for this type of content. This is not a scene from your favorite Netflix drama. This is informative, dialogue-based, essentially talk show content. And you want to make sure that people can focus on the conversation. So unnecessary camera movement and unnecessary camera jitter and camera shake can really distract from people's ability to really focus in on the content. Another important element of your camera setup is understanding how to color your footage when you're done filming. So it's very recommended that you look up the type of cameras you're using and you get a basic understanding of color grading using those cameras so that you know what options you have and what flexibility you have to get really amazing looking colors out of your footage. Now, once you've figured out all the production side, the audio, the lighting, the camera, the next most important element of starting a podcast is understanding and determining what is your niche, what is your focus, what is the foundation of this product that makes it interesting to the masses. We live in a world where there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of podcasts even, right? And it can be very discouraging when you look at the amount of saturation in the market and you say, well, how am I supposed to break through all this noise? It's very simple. If you are locked into a very specific niche, a niche that ideally you resonate with personally, you'll be able to find your audience and speak directly to a group of people who you relate to and they relate to you. And that is going to be your best shot at building something long lasting. It's important to understand your audience, understand what they want, what they're looking for, why they're here. And it's very important to also be a member of the audience too. The most successful people in this lane are going to be people who can simultaneously put themselves in the producer's chair, directing the situation, while also putting themselves in the front row of the audience, watching it from the outside looking in as a fan of this topic, as a fan of this concept, as a fan of whatever your podcast is about. It should start with being a genuine fan of the subject matter. Now, the next and final element of the more conceptual side of starting a podcast is the naming and the branding. Now, it's not just the South Park meme, but I'm telling you, the name is more important than you think. The name of your podcast could be the difference between audience retention and discovery and nothing. So it's very important that you try to think of a name that speaks to the core of your niche, that's clever in some type of way, but overall just sounds really damn cool. That's the most important thing. It just has to sound cool. It has to be something that speaks to the essence of the crowd that you're targeting, which is why it really helps to be an authentic member of that community, an authentic member of that audience. It's very difficult to tap into the hearts and minds of people you don't understand. So I would say stick to what you know and what you love and the things that you've been obsessed with for years and years already, and it'll come to you very easily. I promise you. It'll come to you very easily when you're saturated in your niche. Now, always you're going to want to check for domain availability, name availability. So I would suggest just doing a quick search on ChatGPT when you're doing your naming process and you have your list of names, and just make sure you cross-reference and double check, has this name been used for another podcast, and is that podcast in the same niche as I am? Now, part of this whole branding and naming thing is understanding the visual elements of brand, right? Logo is incredibly important. Once you have that name, you're locked in. Do whatever it takes to get that logo and get as clean and as professional a version of it as possible. Even if you have to rely on AI tools like Midjourney or ChatGPT, ideally, I would hope that you can find a graphic designer or utilize tools like Fiverr to reach out to independent contractors that can get those logo designs made for you and have something like really unique with a human touch. But if you have to use AI, it's not the end of the world. You can always change your logo as you grow if you have a name that you can lock into. So most important thing, name, then logo. Get that logo and start plastering it everywhere. Make sure it's a part of all your marketing promotional material when you're selling the fact that you have this awesome, amazing podcast. Now, what puts all of this together and what makes these projects work is consistency. Consistency is everything. So the most important thing, more important than any of the things we've spoken about in this video so far, is consistency. Whether it's 2025, 2035, 2015, it doesn't matter what year it is. It doesn't matter the market conditions. It doesn't matter how saturated the field is. Consistency will win at the end of the day. So it's very important that when you start your podcast to have a consistent delivery schedule that is something that you can commit to and reasonably produce. If once a week is stretching it for you, then maybe commit to once every 2 weeks and stick to it. It's better to commit to something and stick to it than to be constantly fluctuating, because the algorithm is going to be making adjustments trying to figure out your content constantly, and it puts you at a disadvantage compared to those accounts that just post on a consistent schedule. So the more consistent you can be for longer periods of time, the more growth you will see over time, assuming that your content is actually interesting, actually authentic, and actually resonates with the audience that you are trying to speak to. So that's the most important part. Consistency in your authenticity. Otherwise, it's not going to go the way you thought it was going to go, and it's not going to go the way you want it to go. Now, one of the techniques that we use for consistency is batch recording. If you have the opportunity or the option, batch record. If there's a couple days in the month where you just happen to have way more free time on a consistent basis, or maybe there's a day in the week where you're just always free, make that your batch recording day. If you can do 2, 3, 4 episodes in that one particular day, that'll set you up weeks in advance of schedule, so that if things come up with life or family emergencies or vacations or jobs or whatever you have to do, you have enough of a buffer that you'll be able to survive that personal instability while maintaining the consistency and stability on your channel. Another great technique is to use scheduling tools to your advantage. I highly recommend that once you have the content and once you've created a buffer where there's a few weeks of content stacked up and ready to go, schedule it out in advance. Use YouTube if you're using YouTube to schedule it. If you're just on the audio only platforms, you can still schedule it on all of those platforms. I highly recommend scheduling as much of this content as possible, including your social media posts. At the end of every episode, you can clip it up and chop it up into as many social media posts as you need, and all of those posts can be pre-scheduled. So I highly recommend that if this is something that you're seriously considering and you're serious about this podcast, that you're scheduling out as much of this content as far in advance as possible as you're making it, to just help guarantee that consistency. That's the most important part for all of us. Now, I'll give you a little bit of bonus. I'll give you a little bit of cheat code, especially if you're using YouTube as the primary delivery system for your podcast. I highly recommend that if you are doing long form podcasts in the 45 minutes plus, whether it's an hour, hour and a half long, 2 hours, however long, right? I highly recommend that in addition to the full episodes of your podcast, you break up your episodes into clips based upon topics. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a super cheat code here. If you are looking at YouTube for the monetization, the magic number is 8, okay? 8 minutes. Once you're monetized on YouTube, clips that are longer than 8 minutes get significantly more ads and thus more ad revenue than clips that are shorter than 8 minutes long. So if you're looking from a business side about how to maximize and you have an hour-long podcast, maybe breaking it up into 6 clips that are 8 to 10 minutes long is the ideal way to max out your keywords, max out your discoverability, max out the topics that you discussed in that episode while bringing attention to the channel as a whole. Another little marketing technique that I'll give you as a little bonus content is to give bonus content, behind the scenes, the process content, as they call it, showing how it's made, right? That content might do well, might not do as well. That's not the bread and butter of your podcast. That's not the meat and potatoes of what you're selling, but it does provide really great connecting points for your audience and the people who are really invested in you and what you have to say. If they're already watching episode after episode after episode, they're going to be interested in some behind the scenes of how things are made. You don't have to give up the whole recipe, but it is nice, especially in this authenticity market that we live in today, to show the process. Lastly, I really recommend that you engage on your social medias. Comment, respond to comments, share, DM, tag, do all the things to let people know that you actually care, you're actually serious, this is a real thing for you, and that you're excited about it, right? And you're participating in it with them. Put out polls, put out surveys, do whatever you can to connect with your audience and constantly try to get their feedback. Try to have them tell you what they want to watch. And the bigger your audience and the more feedback you have, the more effective your content delivery system will become. I guarantee it. So there you have it. The core fundamentals and a couple cheat codes sprinkled in of what a podcast is and how to make a podcast in 2025. I'm telling you right now, it's not too late to start. There are podcasts that will be founded in the next 6 months that will be incredibly successful, monumental podcasts 5 years from now. Yours could be one of them. Just follow these steps. Make sure you adhere to the basic fundamentals of how this content works and the history of this content and why it needs to work the way that it works. And you will have success through authenticity, consistency, and value. Make sure you give people something that you would watch. And with that said, thank you so much for watching. And please tune into our channel for more clips and subscribe and like and tell all your friends and do all the things, because it's very important that we share this information, right? I run a production company. Aaron Ross Media proudly sponsors all of the content you see on this channel, but that doesn't mean that we're going to hold back information or hide behind a paywall to gatekeep knowledge. I'm willing to give this knowledge away because I believe that we are all better off when we are all more competitive. So with that said, keep tuning in, keep watching, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Did you like that clip? Did you like it? It was cool? All right, so then what are you doing? You're just sitting there. Subscribe, hit the button, subscribe, hit the button. Tell them who sent you. Also, if you're in the New York State area, hit me up. AaronRossMedia.com. But yeah, subscribe. Hit the button. Come on. It's free. It's free.